Hello, everybody. Welcome yet another edition of 18 Minutes with 180 Markets. Friends, we all know the clean energy revolution is upon us. And what does that mean? It means that any company that is involved, whether upstream or downstream, is taking advantage and getting huge price increases. And that's why we are so thrilled today to have back with us Dave Christensen, Managing Director of Rensacor Resources, a graphite explorer soon-to-be production company. And Dave's going to talk about that supply-demand dynamic, and not only that, how Rensacor has truly transformed itself, and I'm so excited to hear about it, but even more importantly, what's going to happen in the future. But it really has been an amazing journey so far. And with that introduction, Dave, welcome back to the show.
Thanks, Craig. Great to be here.
Hey, Dave, as I said, Rensacor, what a difference the last year and a half has made. Can you just reflect a little bit about on the company? And it's not just in the share price going from 1 cent up to 12. It's also within the company itself fundamentally.
Yeah, look, I think the fundamental change is the demand for the product we're producing is starting to increase in a significant way, right? We all went through COVID and the uncertainty during 2020, and we didn't know where we were going to come out of it. And what happened is we came out of it, and battery minerals were all pushed ahead to a significant degree after really a pretty moribund period that we suffered, but a lot of us suffered in the battery mineral space. But where we're emerging now is the expectations of battery minerals that are, 6-7 years old. Especially in graphite, because I think graphite was the first one to take off, are finally coming to fruition. And now we're seeing great demand in lithium-ion batteries. And for us, what that means is you need more lithium-ion batteries, you need more anodes, and we're looking at producing the precursor material. And all of a sudden, that demand is translating into direct responses from offtake partners. And really, that's the difference for us in the past 6 months is we went through, sort of 2 re-rating periods. We announced 3 offtake agreements, non-binding offtake agreements, but offtake agreements, 2 with Chinese anode companies. And that really, I think, maybe put us on the map for a lot of people. And then the second thing that happened is we brought in a major non-Chinese offtake partner in Posco that alone could purchase enough material in order for us to finance our stage 1 production. And I think what that's a function is within the larger supply chain in battery minerals, people are becoming concerned where they're going to get their material. And I think, in the graphite space, we think we're pretty uniquely qualified to provide maybe a competitive advantage, certainly outside of China. And we're seeing that in the offtake side. So the big difference that's happening is all that promise we were talking about, for a number of years now, is really coming to fruition. We're seeing it in offtake partners. And I think this is the first move. The first move is, you're seeing offtake partners come to the fruition. The next thing we're going to see, and we're starting to see it now, is price movement in the commodity that we've certainly seen in lithium over the past 6 months. It hasn't happened in graphite yet, but it's starting. And then things get really exciting.
Yeah, and maybe we'll start out, there's a lot to chew on there, with just the graphite market itself. Why does it look so good from a supply-demand dynamics? Because it really is, as you said, the pricing just seems like it only has one direction to go at this point.
Yeah, look, the supply and demand, right? You need more lithium-ion batteries, you need more anodes. It's very quick to build a lithium-ion battery factory, comparatively speaking. In the Western world, we could do this in 2.5 years. In China, probably 2.5 months, quite honestly. Same with increasing anode capacity. However, when you're trying to get the mineral out of the ground and then process it in a form that can be used in anodes, it takes longer. It takes a lot longer. And that's what we're seeing right now. And that's why, sort of the market, really starts to look exciting because you're seeing a supply gut. And then the dynamic starts to switch from, a buyer's market, which it's been traditionally, to a seller's market where the buyer is most concerned about security of supply. And we're starting to see those signs right now.
Yeah, and as far as security of supply, as you said, are you seeing, one of the advantages to Rensacor is that your project is located in Australia, a politically, let's just call it safe jurisdiction. Are you noticing in your discussions with multinational companies that is a huge leg up for you compared to some of your competitors?
Well, I think we're pretty unique in offering, you know, an integrated solution, in offering a purified spherical graphite product to an anode company. And I don't think there are many other people outside of China who are doing that. And that puts us in a pretty good position from a supply chain perspective, because it's, look, our market right now is anode companies. All of them are in Northeast Asia, in predominantly China. And then you have South Korea and you have Japan. And that's the market for our material right now. Now it'll change in 5-6 years maybe, but that's the market right now. And we were able to work out a non-binding agreement with Posco, and then look more closely at converting that into a binding, based on the fact that they need non-Chinese offtake. So we're a great alternative for them. The same is true for the Japanese market, but I wouldn't discount the Chinese market either, right? So, you know, China's less concerned with non-Chinese supply, but their demand is growing faster than their supply. And the fact that we're a non-Chinese alternative is fantastic going forward. I think it gives us a leg up, you know, certainly with the non-Chinese companies. And I think we're sort of unique in there, in that I really don't believe there's anybody else like us who could look at having a tier one graphite project that just happens to be in the same kind of jurisdiction with high ESG standards, big renewable energy, strict environmental rules. We just happen to have, you know, not only a great resource, but a great location. And I think that should line us up quite well in offering a non-Chinese solution. But at the same time, I think it's still attractive to China.
Yeah, it really is, as you put it down there perfectly, which is you really tick so many different boxes. Can you just talk also about your particular, you mentioned earlier about your purified graphite product. Can you just explain maybe at a high level why that's so important?
Right. So look, graphite is predominantly used for industrial purposes. You know, we call it a battery mineral, and it will become a battery mineral, but only a majority battery mineral close to the end of the decade. Largely graphite concentrates you produce at a mine site go into steel manufacturing, refractories, foundries, crucibles, and only less than a quarter goes into the battery market. But that's the high growth area. That's the exciting area, and that's the area where you have companies that have significant requirements to expand, and they need to buy not just a little bit of it, lots of it, the kind that would justify the economies of scale of an operation like ours. And so what we're doing is we're having not only the graphite concentrate operation, but we're vertically integrating that so we can produce it into a form that can be sold directly to anode manufacturers, right? So we take it from the mine site, and then we upgrade it through a milling and a purification process. We produce this spherical, high purity product, purified spherical graphite. It's used directly in the manufacture of lithium-ion battery anodes. That's the high growth area in the graphite space. And not only is it the high growth area, it's the area in which you have companies that are expanding at leaps and bounds. Companies like Posco that want to dominate the anode market, but to do that they need supply, and that's, you know, we can plug directly into that high growth area. And as a seller of a commodity, you're really a leg up if you're in that high growth area, and by purifying and spheronizing the graphite, that puts us into that immediate high growth area.
Yeah, and you know, absolutely, and maybe that's a great point to talk about the Posco MOU, because, and specifically what I'm really interested in is you cover, I believe, about 60,000 tons per annum, and your initial estimate of production will be around 30,000 tons. Can you just tell us a little bit more about the dynamic of getting that offtake agreement in place and why it's so critical for you?
Right. So for any industrial mineral, any mineral that doesn't trade on an exchange, you always have the difficulty of how do you demonstrate a revenue stream in order to raise the construction capital, right? And it's a bit of a catch-22. Now, in our case, we want to find good, you know, let's say bankable customers, so we can put in a large proportion of debt financing to get started. You look at a group like Posco. Posco is a huge conglomerate. It's Australia's largest single export customer, and we would say it looks like a AAA credit, and it's a fantastic customer to have. They have a track record of working with other companies, including companies like Pilbara Minerals here in Australia in the battery mineral space. They also happen to be a leader in the production of lithium-ion battery anodes. So for us, bringing Posco on as a potential offtake partner is significant because it can allow us to do what has heretofore been the most difficult thing for projects like ours to do, which is to obtain financing. Now, in terms of the quantities, this is where it gets really exciting. So when we did our integrated study at the midpoint of last year, we were looking at producing 28,000 tons of the purified spherical graphite product. And that looked like a bit of a stretch goal because we didn't have any offtake agreements in place. We were in the middle of COVID. Keep in mind that the world was a lot different, just 18 months ago.
Definitely.
And but we sort of saw where the market was going. And you said, look, this is inevitable. It has to happen. And what happened, and this goes back to your first question, what's happened at the beginning of the year is that potential offtake man came, and boy, did it come, right? Like we quickly signed up 3 non-binding offtake agreements for 10,000 tons, 2 with Chinese anode companies, 1 with a Japanese trading company. And then Posco came along, and they're with their expansion demands, they're the single largest purchaser of purified spherical graphite outside of China, and they want to be one of the largest anode makers in the world. And they're currently, considered, a tier 1 anode company. They want to continue, they want to expand, and they want to meet the demand requirements of their battery, customers. How do they do that? Well, they need new material, and with Posco, looking at up to 30,000 tons. So that's, we're calling it our stage 1 production. When we came out with the announcement in July, we were looking, well, that'll get us started, and we'll consider a stage 2 later. But what this has forced us to do is it's forced us to say, look, we need to look at that capacity. We should be expanding stage 1. We should be looking at a stage 2, and it's the demand it's really happened so quickly. And then getting back to what Posco means for us is, whether it's Posco or other big customers like that, the demand is there now. And what that means is there's the potential for us to start up large, and the market's really looking exciting right now. And it's at current prices, we look at a current production rate of 28,000 tons, and we think, geez, that could have an NPV of $500 million US. That looks exciting, and that's without considering potential expansion, which could make it from very profitable to very, very profitable. And then we're not even taking into account yet some of the potential upward movement that we're expecting when we see some of the reforecasting of graphite prices, the purified spherical graphite, and you can just look at the lithium sector to see what that does. So it's really exciting, and where Posco and the other offtake partners come in is it really crystallizes that demand, and it allows us to really stop talking about how we're going to do it. But really fast forward and move into where we want to be, which is constructing and then producing product.
Right, and I assume that also having Posco on board, your conversations with financiers just becomes infinitesimally easier.
Yeah, I think so. And keep in mind, we still have a few yards to go with Posco. We have a non-binding agreement with them. We have to negotiate offtake terms. They're also likely to make an equity proposal if they favorably view the resource after completing their due diligence. But absolutely, having the potential of a company like Posco really opens up the potential to get more favorable debt terms, right? And that would mean it costs us less for the debt, and then you can look at lower rates, you can look at longer tenor, and that makes the overall economics of it look even more favorable.
Yeah, there's so much to look forward to. In your eyes, for investors, what should we be looking for out of Rensacor over to call it the next 12 to 24 months? Like, what would be your definition of success?
Yeah, well, by next year, this time we expect to be in construction, and then 2 years out, we want to be looking at commencing production. And how do we get there over the short term? Well, we complete our work on the offtake side, where we convert those non-binding agreements into binding agreements. We potentially look to bring on either Posco as an equity partner if the proposal is favorable after the completion of the due diligence. We'd be looking at completing our technical work, which means optimizing the definitive feasibility study from 2019, doing the detailed engineering on the downstream, and we'd be looking to do complete our regulatory approvals. And keep in mind, this is, as we touched on an earlier question, this is one of the longest sort of lead time items. So we've been developing Civia since 2015. So we're, what are we, almost 7 years into it right now. And the regulatory process is long. So, you mentioned before, look, it's an advantage to be in a country like Australia. It certainly
Yes.
is, but there's a price we pay for that. And the price we pay is a exceptionally long regulatory time where we have to dot all the I's, cross all the T's, and we're getting very close to the end of that. And we, like specifically for us, we have our mineral lease. We've gone through the environmental studies and the public back and forth, and then the back and forth with the mines department on that. In Australia, we have a secondary process, which is getting they call it the program environmental protection and rehabilitation, or PEPA. We've put in our proposal for that. Once we get that, we expect that to happen next year. That'll really de-risk the operation, because that'll mean, okay, on the mining side, we have our regulatory approvals. And as all of us know in the mining space, regulatory approvals, they're not quick. They take a long time. But once we get that, we expect to get it in the early part of next year, that'll demonstrate, I think, significantly that not only do we have a resource that has a lot of potential, we'll have a licensed resource. And then, from, again, we talk about the supply and demand. It's easy to build the gigafactories, easy to build the anode manufacturing facilities. What's really hard, the glut, is getting the mining operations like ours up and running. So that'll de-risk it. So what we're expecting to do over, sort of the next few months is move forward on that as quickly as we can. We're going through our final downstream site selection for the location of the PSG facility. Then we'll be looking to get that permit. And then we'll be looking to come up with some optimized studies that take that 2019 DFS and couple it with the downstream facility. And really probably hammer out the potential to have, stage 1, stage 2 will answer those questions. And at the same time, we'll complete the offtake. And then, next year we want to get the final investment decision, go through that financing. And so if we're talking a year from now, hopefully we'll be updating you on construction progress.
Definitely, Dave. And certainly your background, you're all about negotiations, and you're going to have a lot of fun doing it over the next 12 months. Dave, unfortunately, we have to keep this interview short. Do you have any closing remarks for everybody?
Yeah, look, what I would say is graphite is starting to take off, but it's only starting to take off, and it's really been the transition to graphite as a battery mineral, and we've seen some of that demand that we talked about that's coming out in the offtake side. I'd keep an eye on the price, because we've always been long on the graphite price. We're starting to see some changes now. We saw a 10% increase in the price of purified spherical graphite last week. That's a major increase. That's the first major increase we've seen in a while. So watch the space from a market perspective. And then again, please keep an eye on us, because we intend to be putting out additional updates on our technical and regulatory progress. And then that'll hopefully dovetail into good news on the offtake side. And we'll be able to take advantage of some of that excitement in the sector.
Great. Thanks, Dave. And definitely be in touch.
Okay, great. Thanks very much, Greg.
Thank you for watching another presentation by 180 Markets. Don't forget, if you want access to thousands of ASX capital raises, head on over to 180markets.com.au, sign up, and get on board for our very next capital raise. Thanks for watching.